Usually we send the link to the students, Futura's students, but I don't know, now with this open meeting, maybe not only for Futura students. So we have more students arriving, Gabriel and Murilo, Paola, teacher Paola, hello.
Hello.
So teacher Ivana is getting here. Ana Julia, hello Ana Julia, how are you? You are together, you see. How nice of you. Hey Ivana, how are you? I was wondering, who is Beatriz? That's your daughter.
Yes.
So people, for those who didn't know, Barbara and I, we met perhaps 2 years ago at university. She was participating into a program, the ETA program from Fulbright, is it? Yeah. So this program was supposed to allow some former students from the US to come to other countries like Brazil to help, to assist some professors at university. So she followed my colleagues and I in different disciplines so she could contribute and make some discussions and some activities with the students. And that's why we got along, and then we started having this very nice relationship, I would say, this friendship. Last meeting we had Adam here. He participated in the same program as Barbara, and they were homemates. Yes, they lived together in a host family in Caxias. So she can talk a bit about this experience in Brazil. She can talk about her turning back or going back to the US, nowadays situation, and all the questions you may have about it. Okay? So I'll leave to you, Barbara. So maybe you can start talking and then guiding the discussion. That's fine?
Sure, sure. And so, hello everyone. I'm gonna try to see if I have a better way to see you all. And so it's good to have some familiar faces, of course. So as Samita said, my name is Barbara. I lived in Brazil for 2 years. My first year in Brazil, I was able to live in Caxias do Sul. And then I also lived a year in the Nordeste, in Sergipe. And so I'm a big fan of Brazil. Wow. And I have been teaching for about 6 years now as a volunteer. And it was because of this experience that I was able to continue that in Brazil. I worked with different business classes, and then I specifically liked working with Samita's classes because of her pedagogy classes, as well as being able to work with future educators. I think it's essential for us to be able to have this cultural exchange with different educators because we are really implanting and allowing a lot of ideas to grow with young learners and even as adults, right? because most of the English as a second language or foreign language learners I've worked with have been adults, and I love adults. So today, of course, we're going to be doing kind of like introductory stuff. I would also like to get to know all of you better. And then we were thinking about talking more about the current political climate in Brazil and the United States and in the world. Unfortunately, we're facing a very difficult time. And so part of my goal is also to kind of extend that understanding and that empathy to you all, to let us know that we're literally all on this together. And so I would also like to, you know, open up the floor to any questions in general. You know, I'm pretty much an open book. And so I wanted to ask Amita, was there anything else that you wanted me to include specifically in the introduction for myself that I didn't think of? Or do we kind of want to do like a popcorn sort of idea, like a thing? You guys can ask me different things just to get to know me better and to get to know you all better.
Yeah, I don't know, perhaps people can start making you questions, for example, about the place you are right now, what are you working on? I don't know. I'll let people some room for speaking. If nobody say anything, I can speak.
Sounds good. Can I ask a question? Okay.
Go on.
So Igor, I'm putting you on the spot. What do you remember about working with the ETAs at UX?
OMG. Awesome. So let me think about. It was a really interesting experience that we have with you guys. I really enjoy it, especially you and Adam, because we connected more. Your postcard is here in my bulletin. Yeah, it's there somewhere. The experience was really good. I thought I never met like a native speaker, so it was like, oh my god, what am I supposed to say? How am supposed to behave? What I'm supposed to do? I was like really scared in the first moment, but then I realized how amazing you guys were and are actually. Essentially was that I thought that you helped us a lot. I think that you, Barbara, you have like this kind of, how can I say this? You have this energy that brings up people to think differently. And I think that you helped me a lot during my internship too. So I think that you're really, really nice. Thank you again.
Thank you.
And I don't know what else should I say.
Do you remember maybe one of the lessons that we had together, maybe an example of how working with a native speaker maybe changed your ideas, and maybe in like our pedagogy class?
So I know that we also participate in English and Chill sometimes. Mm-hmm. So I think it was a nice idea to like see different aspects of English, not just like grammar and language itself, but also culture. I think that is really important. So I am suspect to talk about culture because I'm really related to this. I think that you brought us some ideas, some different ideas of how to behave, how to treat English as a language. I would say that. So yeah, definitely you had changed some aspects that I have in that time about English. So
fantastic. Okay, and thank you, Igor, for letting me put you on the spot.
You're welcome.
In English, we call this the hot seat. So, a cadeira quente, essentially. And so that's when we, put you in this situation. Myself, even though I have been like a teacher for 6 years, and then also, working with Brazilians for 2 years plus, I still get nervous every time I speak. I don't know why. And so it's perfectly normal. And so I appreciate, you letting me put you in that position. I guess if I can, I would like to hear from some folks from your school, Samira, if that's okay. I'm very curious because I know more about OOCs, of course, but I don't know as much about your school. So if I can meet some of your teachers.
Sure, I think it could be very nice. The teachers could present themselves or say something about their experience in the school. I don't know. Feel free, girls. Please go on. Please say good things about me, okay?
I will tell good things about the school, Samira. You asked about the school. So let me start. A lot of you know me. I am Joyce. I've been working at Futura since, my goodness, 2016, but I've been teaching, I don't remember anymore. I think it was 20 years ago. And it's really good to work at Futura. We have different kind of to deal with the students, and we keep in touch, really close contact with the students. We care about them, and we care about their learning. And our way of working, it's a little bit different from other schools. It's all about because Samira asked us to do that. So we follow some rules, of course. Each student, each teacher have a different way to teach, but we follow some stuffs that are required for us. But it's really, really good. And the students are a little bit shy, I think. I can see many of mine, but I don't think they're gonna talk too much. It's like Igor told before, what I'm gonna do, what I'm gonna say. They feel so uncomfortable for the first time, but you don't need to be correct. You need to be understand. I think this is the point, the topic of the conversation. We need to talk. It doesn't matter if all the things are right or wrong. You need to comprehension at the conversation.
Exactly. No, and that's an excellent point, Joyce, that it's more about the understanding. And I think that sometimes when you're put into certain situations outside of academia, for example, you will lose this apprehension because you have no other choice but to use a language in a very concrete way. A lot of my vocabulary came from the grocery store. And so I'm a big fan of Zafari, and so is Adam. And then in the Nordeste, I'm a big fan of Gia Barbosa. And essentially, I didn't necessarily go out to bars as much in Brazil. I went to the grocery store. And so this was my fun place, or just to go into the shopping, or as we say in American English, to go to the mall and just interact with people. A lot of times in Brazilian culture, you see more of a direct approach when it comes to selling. And so for a lack of a better or a more delicate word, you're a bit bombarded when you go into stores. Can I help you? Do you want to see anything? Blah, 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 right? And so it's less so in the United States, this approach. And because of that, you are forced to use the language, right? Whereas in an academic setting, unless you're maybe talking to Professora Samira, you may not be as comfortable using that component, right? And so, like I said, it's perfectly normal, even in a speaking setting, to be more nervous. Like I said, that happens to me even as the teacher. And so, honestly, I think it's kind of like one of those just jump into the situation kind of approaches that can sometimes be best. And I used to teach swimming lessons, so I don't recommend this in swimming, you know, where they throw the little child in the pool. This I don't recommend. But when it comes to other languages, I do recommend this approach. And I think we have one more of your teachers from Futura.
Yeah, we have Elaides, we have here Ivana, Renata,
Oh my
Paola.
goodness.
All of them are teachers.
I love teachers. Fantastic. Well, let me see if I can kind of use that immersive approach by introducing a question to start a discussion for today. And so again, what I would like to kind of focus on within our discussion is specifically how the pandemic has affected us. And I think one of the beautiful things, again, so using this because I love analogies, okay? So comparing the immersive aspect of language learning with what has happened during the pandemic, right? In times of great stress, we can either have a fight or flight response, okay? So when you become very nervous and anxious when it comes to another language, you can either, right, flee the situation, or you could try to attempt to communicate, okay? In the grocery store, I generally wanted to eat, right? So I tended to take the fight approach of the two. And I think that this conflict is very present in our world today, right? In a more serious way, where in Brazil and the United States, they're the two countries that have the greatest increase or most rapid growth of cases of COVID-19 or the coronavirus in the world. Unfortunately, as I have told Samira, that we have many things in common, this included. And so in the midst of all this conflict, not to mention a lot of issues in terms of the violation of civil rights in many cases, that this has been a historical issue in the world, not just as of this year, but in the midst of all this chaos, right? What are we doing in our own individual cases to try to take care of ourselves? And so a wonderful way to put this in English is self-care. I believe in Portuguese it's autocuidado, right? So what have we been doing in order to take self-care into consideration, right? What have we been doing? And this can be anything, okay? And it's not a competition. A lot of people think that the pandemic is a time to like reorganize your whole life. I'm not saying that. But what have we been doing to survive this chaos? Maintain our sanity.
Surviving.
Yeah.
Surviving.
So
we are surviving.
What have you been doing specifically to make that survival more successful?
Trying to adapt, especially at work, because we didn't have this idea of working online. And for me, it was a big taboo, I didn't trust much about this online issue. And then seeing people committed to the classes, they miss less classes, they want to talk, they feel more comfortable sometimes talking through this screen. I feel more motivated to work. So I think despite all this bad situation we are living, we are having some good results about that.
Yeah, and I think that also brings up a valid social issue too, Samira, is that in my experience teaching in Brazil, a lot of students, especially those that maybe lived further away from a university, or maybe they didn't have the financial means to always go to school every day, I think that this is a fantastic alternative. Unfortunately, there are many Brazilians that don't have internet, which makes it more difficult. However, if they have it on their cell phone, for example, right, they may have greater access. I remember many students that I worked with in the Northeast and even in the South would travel, sometimes ridiculous amounts of time to get to class. And then they have to be at class all day. And then for them to still maintain their energy, still go to their internship, it's obnoxious. And so I also think in terms of our work settings, right, have been greatly challenged. Do we actually need to go into an office to have a successful work environment? Or is it better for rapport? I think that's a French word, as many words in English are. I think that our rapport can greatly be improved if we are focusing more on the work itself than the commute, right? I personally hate driving, and so I know, Samira, you have to drive a very long way to get to work and to get to class. How has that affected your stress level personally, being able to substitute that commute time for actual productivity?
Personally speaking, for me, this pandemic situation is awesome. Yeah, because I'm saving 8 hours per week without commuting. So this is brilliant for me. I can spend this time reading, doing new projects and trying new things. So
or even taking a nap.
Taking
right?
a nap, yes, doing, I don't know, things you can have. There is the good side, yes, but let's listen to other people, because otherwise.
Oh, absolutely. Hold on, I'm gonna take a picture. Luigi, you look like a wonderful person.
You can pick up someone, perhaps.
Yes. Luigi, what have you been doing during this pandemic to maintain your mental health and do what we call self-care in English?
Well, I always be a calm person and a person who is adapted to these very stressful situations and very different types of action that I have to do. And in this period of full stop, I keep saying, if I can say this, reading, listening to music, and studying English, and something that is very good for me. Try new recipes, and sometimes I eat what and other activities. Take care of my cat, play video games, and that kind of things that helps to distress of this unusual time, or this could be the third war. I don't know, maybe the new beginning.
I hope so. I hope that it's coming to the best, and I think we're almost forced to be optimistic, right? I like what you said about trying new recipes and then also having more time to maybe be with the ones and the things that you love. I think one thing that has made me very happy, since I'm not working full time right now, I am what we call laid off. And so I'm working part-time again. However, I'm able to sustain this time with food, right? And so I'm able to try new recipes, maybe add more nutrition into my life, into my family's life, and support them in that way. And so then that also replenishes your mental health and your physical health, which is fantastic. Let me see. What have been some bad habits that you have formed during the pandemic? What have been some bad habits?
That I've been made? Yes.
Yeah, so the pandemic is not all fun and games, my friends. So what are some things that we have formed that aren't the healthiest for us? What are some habits?
They are not so... maybe one that is bad in this pandemic is sometimes eat a lot. Eat a lot. Right. it's the best the way that might affect your health a lot. Even me, because I like to try sweet recipes.
Yes.
So
Brazilians, especially in the South, make the best sweets and the best cakes. I gained like 10 kilos in Caxias because of you people, with all of your bolos. This is your fault. Okay?
It's like some recipes. For example, I guess you know that cake called cenoura, bolo de cenoura.
Yes, I was about to say. My favorite would be carrot cake with a chocolate ganache.
Mm-hmm.
My Brazilian mother, Alaine, made this for me. So good. So good, my friend.
And other recipes, Italian recipes. For example,
yes.
Tiramisu. Yes. It's very good.
No, I missed, I think, angolini soup.
Ah, agnolini, sì.
Angolini. I'm not Italian. My ancestors are Polish, so.
Polish.
Yes, but there are plenty of Italians in the United States. Many Italians.
There are Polish as well. Many.
No, there's lots of Polish people in the South. Yeah.
Many more recipes in Polonese recipes.
Fantastic.
I know USA is the major country that are having many immigrants, many in very generations. I know.
Yes.
So great.
And it's very interesting too. Now that you mentioned that too, that in the south of Brazil, you see more affiliation with your ancestors' culture. And so you'll say, oh, I'm Italian, oh, I'm Polish, or you'll meet a lot of people that also have like Arab roots, a lot of different European countries in general though. But in other parts of Brazil, you see a lot of people saying, I'm just Brazilian, right? And right. So a Brazilian could literally look like anyone, could literally sound like anyone, right? In terms of their different accents. So I think that's very interesting. Whereas in the United States, we have more of affiliation with our ancestry in terms of saying, oh, I'm Polish American, for example. Mm-hmm. I don't personally identify as Polish American because I actually don't speak Polish. I speak Spanish and Portuguese. And so I have more of a connection to cultures related to those languages. However, I still try to incorporate that culture into my cuisine, for example. Mm-hmm. I want a new victim. Thank you, Luigi, for being on the hot seat for me. Let me see who's on here. Joanna, you look very quiet. I'm going to pick you, if that's okay.
Okay.
So, if I can ask you a question.
Okay. Go ahead.
So, kind of referencing some of Luigi's insight into his experience during the pandemic, do you think the idea of moderation, right, or balance is possible during the pandemic?
I don't know. Actually, I was thinking about it last week because I realized that I gained a lot of weight during the pandemic because I think it's inevitable. So I did some research and I found out that actually you shouldn't care about it so much because it's almost impossible to control yourself. You're trying to deal with a whole pandemic. Even if you're not suffering from the disease itself, you're trying to manage and you're trying to survive. So I think that your weight, or I don't know, I'm talking about weight, but this applies to the other subject as well. I think that you shouldn't care about your weight right now or how to control yourself because it's really hard. It's almost impossible, I'd say.
Yeah.
You can try to do your best, of course, because we're always trying to do our best and to improve ourselves in a way, but I think that you shouldn't try so hard because sometimes it can be a little
besides challenging, I think it can also be a little frustrating if you can't live up to your expectations. So maybe.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think a good word, if you're familiar with this in English, is draining. Right? We say draining your energy, right? Or very like much losing your energy. And so I just remember winter in Caxias was like this for me. It was cold. I didn't want to leave my house. I was always like afraid to get wet because I thought I would freeze to death. It's raining constantly. There's such good wine and pizza and pasta, and I didn't know anything to do with myself except for eat wonderful Italian food. And so kudos to all of you for living in the South during a pandemic, because the food is too delicious to begin with. But I think it's, for me, most essential to focus on the mental health aspect, because it's like you said, weight isn't necessarily a reflection of our health either, right? There are many skinny people, not I, that can eat whatever they want in terms of fast food on a regular basis, right? And that doesn't necessarily reflect on their weight. But, you know, as much as we can, try to maybe do some exercises, cleaning, just to have some movement in our lives, right? It's when we become stagnant, and this also applies to intellectual stimulation. It's when we become stagnant in something that this drains our mental energy. So that's an excellent point, that we shouldn't be so hard on ourselves, right? It's that criticism that really starts to affect us negatively. Fantastic. Okay. Gabriel.
Hello.
Wow. It's very nice to meet you, sir. I don't believe we've met yet. And so I would like to ask you, how has the quarantine affected your day-to-day life?
Well, affected because now I started to work at home. At the beginning, I suffer a bit because of the connection with internet, but nowadays it's more easy. But I miss a lot of the people from the work, my workmates. But I am adapting myself, including the college that I did in the night. For me, in this aspect that I have to travel a lot every day to go in another city is a good thing, because I don't spend in this time traveling. I spend in my home.
Fantastic. And actually what you just said, Gabriel, made me think of something else, which was a general question that I have for everyone, but I would like to pick Eduardo first, if that's okay. How has the human connection, the element of the human connection, been affected by the pandemic? I myself am in a long distance relationship, and so the pandemic was, you know, perfectly equipped for that kind of relationship. But how has the human connection been affected, right? So Gabriela, you said that you used to go to night classes, you know, you used to work, and so then you were able to talk to different people and have that social aspect in your life that I think personally is essential. But Eduardo, how do you think that that has been affected in your life, and has it affected you negatively? Has it had a great impact?
You can repeat?
Yes. So there's a lot of questions, but essentially, has the disconnection from other people and maybe, you know, having this virtual connection established, has that affected you greatly in your day-to-day life?
Well, I am an introverted person, but I am missing the human contact.
Mm-hmm.
We are adapting ourselves, but it's hard sometimes. We have a luck here because it's not such a big city, and we have a connection with your familiars, because we know where they meet the person is not so dangerous to meet with him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But
So you have to make that sacrifice essentially.
Yes.
Yeah. You all speak so professionally. I'm so impressed. You're all very formal here. Eduardo.
The
Are you
internet is very bad, so all people on my house use it from
Oh, yes.
funny and working, and this connection is very bad. And sometimes it's stable, and human contact is very bad. But in my house, I three peoples, and
So that also brings up an interesting point. So thank you, Eduardo. If I can ask Paula, how has this affected, I don't know if you're living with your family, what is your home life, right? How has this affected your relationship with your family members? Okay.
Hello.
It's a loaded question. Hi.
So I don't think it's affecting my relationship with my family because we have a good relationship actually. So and okay, normal. We have been enjoying more time together, playing a lot. Also because I have a youngest brother, so I can play with him. So it's not affecting our relationship at all.
That's fantastic. That has not been my experience. So it's also because I have a different political perspective than my family members. And so this has caused a lot of conflict. I have some pre-existing health conditions. And so because of that, it's more dangerous for me if I were to contract the virus. And I have been someone that has wanted to participate in the protests that have been happening here in the United States. And I am very vocally supportive of the Black Lives Matter movement. And so my parents are much more conservative than I am. And that has caused a lot of conflict and tension in my family. Also because I haven't really lived with my family in 7 years, give or take. And so is there anyone out there in our conversation today that has experienced the opposite of Paula? So is there anyone that has experienced conflict with their family or the people that they live with because of living in, yeah, Renata? Okay, girl, let me have it.
I have a very different opinion from my parents. As you said, they are more conservative. I'm very open-minded, and sometimes I want to express my opinion. They don't agree with me, so we argue a lot. And we are every day together, so it's almost impossible not to argue. And especially because we have so different opinions,
yeah.
You know, it's not easy, but I think we have to deal with these things. Yes, unfortunately.
I know. No, and
Yes.
I think for me, right, and I think many of us are educators or are working in some aspect with education. And I actually had posted something yesterday that I had seen. I had shared something, which was being able to engage in different intellectual conversations with your family, especially if you have different political beliefs, in a way that's more educational instead of arguing. And I think we do this with students as well, where you have to engage with them in a way that they can understand that communication, right? And so one word that has triggered a lot of conflicts in my family is the word privilege, privilégio, which essentially within my family and within a lot of people's heads, it means that you don't work for what you have, right? It means that you are given what you have. And based on the history of Caxias do Sul, for example, the Italians that specifically settled in that area grew up very poor, did not have a lot of resources or a lot of privilege in terms of economic support. And so you have people that did not have an easy life, right? And then you have generations of people that passed down this work ethic, right? And so it's very difficult, I imagine, for this population and their descendants to understand why, as a white person, you can have privilege, right? And so, you know, women, for example, have a disadvantage in society, as well as queer individuals, as well as Black individuals, as well as individuals with disabilities, may it be intellectual, may it be physical, right? And it's just because you are disadvantaged in some way, maybe not because, you know, of your family, but maybe just because of simply your outer appearance or your gender identity, etc., right? And so it's not necessarily that you're a bad person. It's just that certain people, for example, myself, I'm not disabled. And so that gives me more access to different things. I probably would not have been able to go to my university in the United States, or oops, if I had a physical disability, because there are a lot of hills, right? And there are no elevators. So a lot of access is then diminished simply because you have a physical disability. And this is a very simple example, but I think it's almost like, as educators, we have to say, well, why do you think that? We have to give more probing questions in order to understand someone's opinion, instead of, as frustrated as we may become, right, kind of letting them understand their own perspective, right, with reflection. And so it's not so much a direct attack on them. It's more of, okay, well, why do you think that way? Well, what led you to see it that way, right? And so it's almost like a trap in that aspect, right? A more gentle approach. So thank you so much, Anata, for sharing. And Paula, I'm very jealous of you. I'm going to ask a new question, if that's okay. And if you guys ever at any point want to kind of pop back to a different aspect of our discussion, if you think of something else later on, you know, feel free. I just prepared some questions just so we can kind of lead the discussion. But I'm curious also in how has social media affected your ability to access information during this time? Now, this may be, for example, for me, I'm able to stay connected with Brazil and other places in the world because of social media, right? I see what everyone posts on Instagram, on Facebook. And so also maintaining that human connection, right? Most of the people that I speak with, other than the people that I live with, are Brazilians, right? And so I'm able to do that through social media and through technology, right? And so I'm curious on how social media has had an impact on your life, specifically during the pandemic. I'm gonna open this up to the floor. Any takers? Any takers? Also, I think we have someone in the chat. Mona Lisa. Cadê? Mona Lisa, are you there?
She is my personal trainer, you know.
Really?
And I invited her to be here. I don't know exactly. She was saying to me that she is enjoying quite a lot, but she feels afraid of speaking. Maybe she can speak in Portuguese, because you understand Portuguese too. Yeah.
Yeah, you're the boss, Amina. Okay. Mona Lisa, se posso te perguntar algo em português? Então, você pode nos explicar em português e depois posso adicionar alguma coisa em inglês? Então, eu perguntei como foi que sua vida foi afetada nessa época, tipo, como foi que sua vida foi afetada por causa das redes sociais? Se isso te beneficiou, se isso foi uma coisa que te afetou negativamente?
Olá, estou iniciando então os meus estudos nos idiomas, então sei muito pouco ainda. Vou.
Eu também ainda estou estudando português.
Muito bem. A influência, às vezes, ela é boa e às vezes não, né?
Uhum.
Então, muita coisa a gente se influencia por coisas más, né?
Uhum.
De certa forma, por outro lado, é muito importante para acompanhar não só o lugar onde a gente mora, e sim acompanhar o mundo todo, para a gente tirar uma lição, pelo menos, de tudo que está acontecendo e tentar olhar de uma maneira benéfica para o ser humano, né? Encontrar nesse mundo alguma coisa que a gente dê realmente um valor e com as notícias nos cuidarmos, né? Essa consciência que a gente precisa ter para que não agrave ainda mais e para que a gente entenda um pouquinho, né, sobre o que realmente está acontecendo.
Uhum. Exatamente. Então, eu também estou explicando que minha oportunidade para manter contato com vocês, meus brasileiros queridos, foi por as redes sociais mesmo. Então, eu vou botar no chat, ok? Minhas perguntas. Aí, se vocês querem botar no tradutor também, e podem responder no chat, ok? So, I'm going to put my questions in the chat. That way, if you want to put it in a translator so you can understand it, and then if you'd like to respond in the chat, and then I can also call on you, because I think it's extremely important to be able to, you know, maybe break out of your shell a little bit, right? And so I'm going to ask you a very broad question. It doesn't necessarily have to be during the pandemic.
I don't know, perhaps other people you have more questions for Barbara too. Feel free to ask, to write down the chat if you don't feel comfortable making the question orally. The idea is trying, okay? It doesn't matter if you know or you don't know English or if you make mistakes. This is not a test, okay? Just a conversation.
Exactly. No, and it's kind of like, so my boyfriend is Brazilian, right? And so he has gotten to know the United States through our conversations. And I think it's difficult for a lot of people outside of the United States to be able to ask these questions because you don't necessarily have access to a native speaker, right? And so there are certain questions you may have always wondered. You're like, maybe this is correct, I don't know. But you never have the chance to ask anybody, right? Maybe you Google it. But even like random questions, it doesn't necessarily need to be related. That's okay. You can even put it in the chat or you can ask me directly. That's fine. You know, do Americans eat couscous, right? Because that's what Nordestinos eat. Or do Americans eat polenta, right? I don't know. Maybe you wonder these things, right? Does it exist? I don't know, right? Polenta, we don't eat that, no. Couscous, we do have. But basically, like, asking me, like, stupid questions. There's no stupid questions. It's okay, right? There are a lot of things that maybe you wonder about the United States, but you've never had the chance to ask, and that's okay. I'm going to put some questions out there in the chat. So what do you know about the United States? Okay. I love talking about first impressions. Okay. And then how have you gotten to know the United States? So maybe this has been through social media. Maybe this has been through the news. Maybe this has been through movies. I don't know. What is your impression of the United States? And maybe if you attended our last meeting or have met other ETAs, such as myself, what has been your impression of us? Okay. So, and this is open to everyone. Again, you can put the chat. You can tell me directly, whatever is best for you guys, right? This is very much a safe space, un espacio seguro, right? So no judgment here. But I'm very comfortable picking victims. I don't think we've heard, Pedro, I don't think we've heard from you yet about first impressions of the United States.
And I can ask a question for you.
Sure, please do.
I love singers, music, listening to music in English. I can ask a question for you. What's your favorite band, singer, or other famous do you like?
That's a fantastic question. So in my house, my parents never know what language I'm listening to music in. My mother likes to guess, and she likes to try to sing along and make up her words in Portuguese. When I was in Brazil, I really liked to listen to a lot of like sertanejo. I do. This is embarrassing, but I love funky. I love it so much. I'm so bad. I love it. I'm sorry, guys. I think it's fantastic. It's a great cleaning playlist. I really like, this is like early 2000s. I really like punk rock in English. Are you familiar with this, Pedro? Like Fall Out Boy, Panic at the Disco. This is like my childhood. I really like a lot of music in Spanish too, like cumbia, salsa, things like that. I find listening to music in Portuguese to be very relaxing. Okay, Pedro, who are your favorite artists? And it doesn't have to be in Portuguese, it can be in English too.
I have any favorite bands and singers. And I like também any genres of music, sertanejo, rock, aquele hard rock, and pop and trap.
I do love rap too. I love rap in Portuguese. I think it's fantastic. It's like poetry. I feel like Brazilian writers, they are much more thoughtful about their lyrics than in English, in my opinion. Who was I had gone to a concert in Brazil. Trying to think of his name. There's a very good rapper that I want to see if you're familiar with. He's Northeastern.
Brazilian? Emicida?
No. I like Becca a lot. I like him a lot. Do you guys know him? Yeah. What is his name? This is gonna drive me crazy. I hate forgetting things. What's his name? Oh wait, I think I got it. Djonga. Do you guys listen to him? Djonga? No? I'll put it in the chat. So he is from the East. I actually saw him in concert. I'm a big fan. So I like rap a lot better in Portuguese than I do in English. I think also it's about, different social justice and just a lot of social issues in Portuguese, talking about inequality, things like that. I feel like rap in English can sometimes be more like funky in Portuguese, where it's more about sexual content. It can introduce a lot of elements of machismo or sexism. then it can talk more about, you know, different social issues and bringing different things to light. And so that's why I think sometimes rap is magnetic. But great question, Pedro. Thank you. Okay, I want another question. More questions, more questions.
Maybe I can ask you a question similar to the one I asked Adam. Yes. He asked it about singers and bands, but I'm gonna ask you about series, shows, TV shows that you like. Maybe a Brazilian one. I don't know if you ever watch it. Can you tell me something?
So what I'm watching right now is the second series of Coisa Mais Linda, which I am obsessed. Girl, I'm obsessed. I have a hard time finding different TV shows and resources in Portuguese. I think, unfortunately, that's because a lot of times what is valued in the world is more English-speaking, you know, TV series as well as music. And so I actually took my mom to southern Brazil 2 years ago, and when we were in the mall or in the shopping center, you only heard music in English, and I was very disappointed with that. And so I think that this has more to do with a lack of pride in Brazil and your own new movies and your own music and things like that, and just having the superiority of English-speaking resources, which, not to say that English is not important, I think it is, but I think it's kind of what Igor was talking about earlier. We also need to encourage cultural exchange, right? So it's not just, you know, there's no such thing as having language without culture, right? And so, for example, I had to learn a lot in Samia's classes about British English, right? I knew next to nothing about British English, or maybe about like Australian English and things like that. And so, unfortunately, you don't find as many resources in other forms of English, right? And so recently I've become very interested in seeing, you know, South African English, for example, because we forget about how many different countries and how many different places actually speak in English, right? Something that I really like about Coisa Mais Linda is that the characters speak English, right? So you'll sometimes see like different scenes where they speak English. I think Brazilians speak beautifully in English. It, to me, sounds like music, right? And I think that this is because you have more vowels in Portuguese. And so because of that, it sounds like you're singing when you're speaking in English. So it's beautiful to hear. It's very much like music.
Barbara, I'm going to ask you about that.
Yes, ma'am.
Probably you are having contact with people from Northeast. Which state are your boyfriend from? Is your boyfriend?
He's from Sergipe, and he lives in Aracaju. That's where my caju came from.
Then
yeah.
Probably you speak in English to somebody else there, or only Portuguese? No?
My best friend in Brazil, we speak in English sometimes. In general, though, in the Northeast, there are less English speakers than in the South.
I see. But I would ask you about this difference. Do you notice any difference between our accent in English? Do you see our gauchés inside English?
So I actually maintained contact with one of the students at UX, and sometimes she would send me audios, like voice messages. And my friends in the Northeast thought it was so odd. I think it's also people in the South speak a lot slower than in the Northeast. Excuse me, I've noticed that people in the Northeast use a lot more slang, and I think people in the South speak a lot more formally in Portuguese, just from what I've noticed. Of course, you know, younger generations, it's different, but in general, that's just what I've noticed. Yeah, I mean, I think it's also just like different influences. And so like you have a lot more like African influence in the Northeast. And so like that also incorporates itself into language and food and things like that. Yeah, I don't know, but I love Portuguese everywhere. And the funny thing is that since I learned Portuguese in the South, that's how my accent sounds in Portuguese, right? And so I probably make more sense in the South than I do in the Northeast. They always think that I'm from Sao Paulo. And so I always get made fun of when I speak in Portuguese with like my boyfriend's friends because they think I sound like a Paulista, but what are you gonna do? Let me see. Okay, and you guys, again, any questions you want to ask? But what is something, let me see, Alides? Is that how you say your name? Alides? Okay, what is something you've always wanted to ask, quote unquote, American from the North, right? Because we're all Americans here, technically.
It was beautiful. My name in English now. I like it. I listened a lot of pronunciation of my name, but like now, never.
How do you say your name in Portuguese?
Elaides.
Elaides.
Can you try?
Oh, that makes more sense.
Okay. I would like to ask you about if you have another, I don't know, idea about travel after this pandemic.
Oh, girl.
Do you have plans?
Excellent question. That's an excellent question. I want a crystal ball to figure this one out. So I went to see my boyfriend in Brazil before the pandemic really hit, and this was in March. And people kept asking me like, oh, have you been to China? I was like, what? I'm like, why would I go to China, right? That seems so random to me, which is interesting because Adam, the other ETA, his sister has lived in China for some time. And so I was very much planning on going back to Brazil in September to visit. I would really like to bring my boyfriend to the South, actually. But I honestly don't know. And it's because I feel like a lot of travel doesn't necessarily have a lot of consideration for either the cultures that we are getting to know or the travelers themselves. I don't know if anyone has been on a plane recently, but it's a miserable process. I hate flying. I prefer taking a bus, actually, because then you can take whatever you want. I like to take snacks. Snacks are important when you travel, right? So I would always get like damascus, apricots, and like grapes, and like I have like a whole bag just of like food when I travel. And I hate planes because then you're like afraid to touch anything, right? There's always someone like right on top of you. You have this much space for your legs. If you've ever seen Adam in person, he's very, very tall, so he was always miserable on a plane. And so I am hoping that some things change for the benefit of travelers, because I find it to be a very uncomfortable and exhausting experience to travel. And so what I imagine is going to happen, and what I've been reading, is people are traveling more locally, which for Brazilians I almost think is a good thing, because I don't know my country as well as I know Brazil, and many Brazilians go to Disney before they go to the Northeast or to the South, or vice versa, right? And so maybe it'll be an opportunity to get to know your own country and your own culture better. I don't know, right? For the time being, though, in the United States, they have been limiting a lot of the visas that they're giving to different countries. So I don't know if there's going to be some pushback from other countries. So generally what happens is, for example, the United States says, oh, Brazilians can't come to the United States, right? So then Brazilians like, screw you, United States, you can't come here, right? So then we have like this pushback because of the conflict. So what do you think is going to happen? I'm going to ask you, because I'm not the expert like this. What do you think is going to happen? Yeah, I don't know, girl. I'm on the same page.
I don't know. I can't imagine.
I want to go to Brazil. That's my plan. That's my desire. So hopefully it gets better.
I can imagine.
Barbara, have you been to other English speaker countries?
I've been to England.
Okay.
I've been to Scotland. I think that's it. I don't really, yeah.
Have you met Sam Hugen?
Who?
Just a silly joke.
Okay.
It's a gorgeous actor. Only.
Oh, I do very much appreciate also when Brazilians develop British accents, because you have more of a British accent, Samita. I think that's beautiful. So when I imagine other people speaking English, I always imagine American accents. I forget that you can learn British accents, for example. So that's always a surprise to me.
My God, I think I have an English like that. So
no,
I don't see that in this way.
Yeah, you sound British to me, but other questions for the American?
Hi.
Hi.
I have a question for you. Did you want to visit another state here in Brazil?
Yes, and so it was very much my goal to make it to the Amazon. Didn't happen. That's okay. Adam went to the Amazon by himself because he's very brave. And also it's easier to travel as a man than it is a woman in general, in my opinion, especially when you're traveling alone. So I'd really like to go to the Amazon. I really like to go to the north. I don't know. I really enjoyed small cities in Brazil. One of my favorite cities that I visited was Florida. I thought it was just so beautiful and so sweet. I would also like to visit where Samira lives. That was also one of my goals. Yeah, I don't know. I really liked vineyards, right? I would rather visit a vineyard in Brazil than go to Italy, most likely. Yeah. Where would you guys like to travel? Whether it be an English-speaking place or not, what is one place that is on your bucket list? Which sounds funny in Portuguese, right? Lista de balde, right? Bucket list. What would be your goal, right? What's your dream spot? What's your destination?
My God, I really wanted to know the entire world, but I know that it's difficult. But I would like to meet German. I don't know how or why.
Yeah, Germany.
I think is an incredible country. There's a lot of sad history, but I think it would be a great place to visit.
Yeah. Something that I also think is very interesting about Germany is that I believe, don't quote me on this, I believe it's illegal to deny the Holocaust in Germany, if I'm not mistaken. And so they're very honest about their history, right? Which I think that the United States has actually done the opposite. The United States has a history of erasing history. And so they generally will glorify white authors and white historical figures and not speak about indigenous peoples, immigrants. They won't talk about Black historical figures. And so it's not until I started learning other languages that I learned more about feminism, that I learned more about Black writers and indigenous perspectives. And so that is also a great benefit of learning other languages, is that you cannot essentially be censored from different forms of information because you have access to that information. I actually sometimes have a hard time finding different articles in Portuguese in order to repost it. It's sometimes only available in English, right? And so you literally have more access, right, to millions more articles because of access to a different language. Luigi, USA, Germany, Portugal, and many others. Okay, so the United States, Luigi, like Brazil, is ginormous. So I myself have only gotten to know a very small fraction of the United States. where in the United States would you like to visit?
Place in USA, I'd like to visit.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there are 50 states. It's difficult. In Brazil, we have 26 plus Distrito Federal. I guess I will start with Texas, some part of Texas, because I know there is a lot of good meat there. So I like to eat barbecue. It's a good source of protein and it's healthy if you don't eat too much. Another
Very good.
parts,
Moderation. Yes, my friend.
moderation. Yes. Another parts, maybe in the center of USA, I guess there are good places. In the north, I don't know because there is a lot of different countries in a small country for my say, because in Brazil we have three região sul, sudeste, north, nordeste. In USA it's divided by states, but there is why they have this name United States. I guess Estados Juntos, but in other possibilities, other ways of thinking of living as well. Comparing Las Vegas, it's very different than I don't know, maybe not New York. It's maybe a comparison, but I guess all the states of the United States are great to visit. I guess I'll start with Texas.
I think Texas is an excellent choice. Also because, interestingly enough, there are many Brazilians in Texas, right? So I think it depends, right? I think that the south of Brazil is very similar in a lot of ways to Texas, in terms of its politics, in terms of its cuisine, right? Minus maybe some Tex-Mex or Mexican influenced food. There is a place where the last place I worked, there was a restaurant called Texas do Brasil, because they had a churrascaria.
Churrascaria
in Chicago. It's in Chicago, yeah. Also, you know, again, because there's so many Brazilians that have settled in Texas, right? So maybe it's a good thing to visit somewhere similar. Maybe, I don't know, maybe you might want to go somewhere very different. So, for example, Chicago, interestingly enough, if you look at the map of my state, which is Illinois, most of the state is very conservative, right, overall. And then Chicago, you have, like on the map, this big, you have a little city, and it's democratic, so it looks blue, right, because it's more liberal. So it's also very interesting, too, depending on where you visit in the state, you can have a very different experience, right? And so in Illinois, you'll have very rural areas, very small towns, whereas in Chicago, it's very urban. There's a lot more immigrants. You'll have a lot of food options, right? And so it's very difficult as well to say what even visiting one state would be like, you know? It's kind of like even in southern Brazil, you have so many different types of cities, right? If you go to Porto Alegre, completely different from Caxias do Sul in terms of the energy, right? And so literally, like me, you could live your entire life in the United States, right? You could live your entire life in one state and still not to get to know, and you don't necessarily have the ability to get to know the entire energy. So I accept your challenge, and I encourage you to get to know the United States or any other countries as much as you would like to. But sometimes I almost wonder if it's better to pick a couple places and get to know them very well.
Yes, it's an option because it's difficult to know a lot of states and a lot of countries in maybe last years of life, maybe. I don't know how many years one person can live, but you can't travel always.
No.
It's difficult, but it's an option.
Yeah, fantastic. So can I ask, and this is open to the floor as we say, what has been your favorite place to travel to locally, right? So within Brazil, what has been your favorite place?
Local. Well, you said about small towns in Brazil, right? That you prefer. I know some part of Flores da Cunha. I studied there. I know other beautiful cities as Gramado here in Brazil. Nova Petrópolis, it's smaller. It's a German majority. And another great Curitiba in Paraná, and Foz do Iguaçu. It's other great city there. No, it's because of this major panoramic nature. That's cataratas, so beautiful. You can't. I guess you already been there, right? So the nature, the water, there are lots of tourists from other countries. There are Germans. The time when I came to Foz do Iguaçu, there were Germans, Americans, and Italians, and a lot of other tourists. Tourists from Brazil, Rio de Janeiro, São Paulo. It's a great place, fantastic place in Brazil.
No, and I completely agree. And actually that comment made me think of something, which was, unfortunately, one of the needs to learn other languages that I feel like a lot of resources aren't available in Portuguese, for example, in the United States when you're traveling. And so you need to learn English, mostly in order to be able to travel outside of Brazil. But then also one of my experiences in Brazil was that you had a difficult time accessing certain areas of Brazil, usually like waterfalls and like cachoeiras and things like that, because A, it's very difficult to access. Maybe you can go by bus or you need a car to go, or B, they don't necessarily have tour guides, or they don't have like the brochures in English or in other languages other than Portuguese, right? And so unfortunately, you are forced to learn other languages, although the positive thing is that you're at an advantage if you do speak other languages. But you essentially need to know these other languages in order to have access to these experiences, right? And to these tourist places, right? So Foz do Iguaçu does a wonderful job of generally offering things in English, Spanish, and Portuguese for the most part, right? Thank you, Luigi.
No mention.
Okay, so I have a bit of a random question, and so if you guys can try to wrap your head around this. I had seen a video recently, I believe it was in Thailand, where they essentially were comparing two different experiences. So one was a very tourist area, right? Where you were able to see a village that essentially existed because of tourism, selling different things to tourists. And anyone who has ever been to, you know, Foz do Iguaçu or even Salvador, like these places, a lot of them exist because of tourism, right? And then the other experience was a quote unquote authentic cultural experience where you had a homestay, you stayed with a family and they cooked you a meal, right? So as you know, interested travelers, right, world travelers, do we think it's possible to have an authentic cultural experience, as in to genuinely get to know a culture? Or is it essentially an illusion? So this is a little bit of a philosophical question, right? So is it possible to have an authentic cultural experience as a tourist? Okay, or is it all an illusion? Right? So when you go to Foz do Iguaçu, all of that was created for tourists, right? If you ever go to the Northeast, to Salvador, you will most likely automatically be seen as a tourist and treated as such, right? And so they create these tours for you. They create experiences for you, right? In my opinion, it's very difficult to travel sometimes to a place that wouldn't necessarily be established for tourists, right? Because maybe depending on your language skills or your knowledge of the area, that's what you have access to. So is it possible to have an authentic cultural experience, okay? Or is it all an illusion, right? Let's get philosophical. Virginia, I have not heard from you, my friend. Oh, I would love to ask you this. So did you understand the question? It's a little bit philosophical, a little bit of a random question, but Luigi made me think this way. So we're blaming Luigi for this. So thank you, Luigi, for making me think deeply. Virginia, what do you think? What is your impression of this question?
Hello. Okay, I will try talk. I'm better listening than to speaking, but
okay.
I can try.
Yeah.
I think yeah, all the I think all the travel you do, it's a cultural experience, because although you talk about they make things, tourist things to entertain you, the people, I think the people is the particular things on the travels. You can learn about the place, talking to the people.
Yeah.
And you have to travel with a view of observer. You have to observe your observe, yes, all the place, and you have to, for example, when I traveled to Nordeste, and I traveled by bus through the cities, and you can observe the people washing the clothes in the river, and how the people live in their houses, and all this is culture, and you can see the differences and how privileges you have about the other people too.
Yeah, no, and I really appreciated that too, Virginia, that sometimes we have to think of like micro things, right? Culture is not just movies, it's not just music, right? It's body language, right?
Yes.
It is how we greet each other, right? Something that I really missed in Brazil was intimacy, in terms of Brazilians, in my opinion, in general, are a lot more comfortable with being closer to one another, less so in the South, but in general, it's a much more warm culture than the United States, right? And this is something that I very much missed, right? And so it's like these slight things. Sharing. Brazilians are very good at sharing, in my opinion, right? Oh, would you like some? Oh, I'm, you know, you have someone over, you have to offer them coffee, you have to offer them cake, you have to offer them something, right? And so in the United States, you maybe offer them water, which is like sad if you think about it. We should always have bolo de cenoura, chocolate cake, or carrot cake, right, with ganache. And so that's an excellent point, right? That it's extremely important to be observant in order to understand a culture, right? Very good. Oh, girl, you got this. I'm proud of you, Zena. Fantastic. So, okay, Ana Julia, if I can ask, what has been a negative travel experience or a positive one? What has been a positive travel experience that you've had?
Do you repeat, please?
And I'll put it in the chat too. What is the negative or positive travel experience that you have had? So something that you have liked or disliked when you were traveling.
Oh, my dream is to travel to some place in the world. It's one motive. I learn English. I'm sorry, I'm so nervous.
Okay. You're doing wonderful.
Just breathe. You're doing well. Go on.
Yeah. I wouldn't have known if you didn't tell me.
Ai, meu Deus.
So, vamos fazer metade, right?
Okay.
So, eu estava perguntando se você tivesse uma experiência negativa, ou também pode falar de uma experiência positiva, quando estava viajando, right? Okay. Só isso.
Então, falar de uma experiência negativa que eu tive viajando? I think I'm so shy.
No, it's okay.
And speak in the first moment is more difficult for me. And I think I was in a different country. I speak some wrong. I'm in first moment eu ia ficar travada, sabe? Aí eu acho que de repente isso iria me ajudar, né? Mas
não tá indo bem.
That's not so easy, right, Ana? But you're doing so well. Go on, speak.
Or positive, travel for different place is opportunity for learn much. Eu acho que quando a gente viaja para outro país, a gente pode aprender muitas coisas, sabe? E nossa, viajar para um lugar diferente é uma coisa que eu quero muito, sabe? E poder estar lá e poder aproveitar ao máximo a experiência, sabe? E por isso...
So, Ana Julia mentioned two extremely important things, okay? So, excellent. Seriously, excellent. So the first thing you mentioned is what we call choque cultural, right? Culture shock. Okay? And the second thing you mentioned was called cultural immersion, imersão cultural, right? And so these are two extremely important concepts that this is why we need to work with native speakers, right? And people from different cultures, because it's as if we were saying earlier with Virginia that we get to know cultures through these small experiences, right? And so, for example, culture shock, right? I had to learn the hard way that you have to share or at least offer in Brazil. So you have a you have a juice, right? You have a juice. Would you like some? Would you like some juice? 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 You have to offer in Brazil, okay? Otherwise it's rude. Even if no one else wants it, you still have to offer. In the United States, you drink your juice, okay? You don't offer for everybody, right? It's an individualistic society. Somos bem individualistas, okay? You don't offer your food for everybody. And so this is something that was shocking to me, right? And also made my host mother very mad because she thought I was rude. Because we don't really share as much as Brazilians do. And then the second thing that you mentioned is something that's in English, cultural immersion, right? That we get to know a culture in a different way, right? And for me, listening to Portuguese firsthand, right? I was able to learn a lot more like subtle details of the language, right? Instead of simply learning how to conjugate verbs, right? And so even you having a conversation with Profi Samira or, any other, anyone else in English, you get to have this exchange of information, right? Which is a beautiful thing. And then you also get to know another person via this language, right? And so, guys, I'm getting mushy over here. I'm getting emotional because, I love languages too. But that's the other thing too is like learning another language requires vulnerability, right? It requires us to be nervous and to be scared. Even now, right? I'm a native English speaker, and it makes me nervous to speak to you in English, and that is okay. That's perfectly normal. It's a beautiful thing because you are giving me the trust, right? And you are letting me into your home virtually, right, in order to speak with you. And that's a wonderful thing. And I very much appreciate you doing that. So thank you.
Okay, that's really nice. I don't know if you have more questions, people. It's like more than an hour and something that we are here. Perhaps Barbara is getting tired. What time is there, Barbara?
It is early. It is 7:08. We are 2 hours behind Brazil.
Okay, you are behind us. Right. So, people, please, last chance before we leave.
Questions?
Can I ask you a question, Barbara?
Yes, my love.
Yeah. So I was thinking today, so what question should I ask Barbara? And I was like in social media and I saw a post about this year to be like the election year for you guys in the United States. Is it right?
Oh my God.
Yeah?
Yes.
So I want to hear like some thoughts about how it is the political situation here, there, United States, because here in our country it's really, really difficult. Today, a student mentioned that our politicians, our government is trash, and I totally agree with him. And then I want to know how are the expectations for this election this year, because I know that the last time most of the country was expecting to that lady Hillary supposed to be the president, and now we have that orange guy. So maybe you can share with us some thoughts how it is the Black Lives Matter important to this election this year. So
Oh,
please.
darling. Okay. See, this is what I get for asking you guys hard questions. You guys okay.
Yeah, you are in the spot right now.
Over
Are the
here.
chosen one.
Yes, my love. Okay, so basically, what I would say is that generationally, okay, voters in the United States are very different. Also, in terms of our expectations for companies and different organizations. So my generation, our generation, Igor, and then also my youngest brother, because he's technically Gen Z, okay, and we are millennials, right? And so our generation, our age group, cares more about the social impacts that companies and politicians have on the world, right? And so for me, when I'm going into Instagram, I personally look for, is someone posting about social justice? Is someone posting about feminism? Is someone posting about inequality in the United States? I care about this. It is not enough for me if you make, like, I buy shoes, okay? This started in southern Brazil. I became addicted to shoes. And so thank you, Caxias do Sul, for making wonderful shoes. But if I'm going to buy a shoe, it is not enough. It needs to be comfortable. It needs to be beautiful. I need to love it. And I need to look at the social impact of the company, right? We no longer are settling for just good products. We want something that is making a positive impact on the world, right? Whereas older generations in the United States especially are more interested in consistency in the product, right? And so that's why you have a lot more franchises because of these generations, which are dying out right now. And so things like McDonald's, Burger King, Wendy's is another one, they are decreasing the number of franchises because our generation doesn't care about repetition. We want you to be a good company, right? We don't want corruption. And so I think that this is something that Brazil is also fighting against a lot, is corruption, right? We don't want you to just be rich. We want you to be a good company. And this also goes to politicians. We're not impressed with you being rich, right? It's not enough for you to be powerful. What do you do for the people? What do you do for poor people? What do you do for Black people, right? Personally, I'm a bit disappointed in the options for president in the United States. I was much more hoping for someone more radical, although in many countries, including Brazil and the United States, we are slow to change, right? And so this is something that happens over the course of generations. And so in the United States, a couple of years ago, Bernie Sanders was shocking, right? The idea of more socialistic ideals in Brazil as well is shocking, right? Because we have such strong capitalistic forces, right? We always think about, oh, let's buy more things, right? If you ever cared anything about economics, this is called Keynesian economics, right? Spending and putting more money into the economy is better. Whereas now, our generation cares more about how are we going to be able to maintain this world. This also is about like environmental things, right? So we're like, okay, what the hell? We're gonna have no polar bears left, right? So we need to fix this problem right now, not in 50 years, right now. Let's fix it, right? What about the Amazon, right? Why are we burning the Amazon? Why, right? Because this is done on purpose. And so I think overall, although it is slow change, it is positive change because we, the key word here is accountability, where we are holding our leaders accountable. If that makes sense. Contabilidade, is that Portuguese? Is that a word in Portuguese, contabilidade? Or is that something to do with accounting?
Contabilidade.
Hell yeah. Yeah, so we are holding ourselves and we're also holding people in power accountable, right? You can't do whatever you want, okay? You gotta like answer to the people. And so that's also the Black Lives Matters movement, is that you cannot silence people that are experiencing injustices, right? So many Brazilians, right, Like taxes are ridiculous in Brazil, right? That's an injustice to your people because you physically are diminishing quality of life in Brazil, right? Because it's like, okay, how am I supposed to provide for my family if I'm just paying taxes, right? And where is this tax money going to? Where? Well, you're not helping the schools, you're not helping educators, you're not, you know what I'm saying? And so you just, in general, are increasing accountability in the world. Slowly, but it's happening. So,
Thank
that's
you.
my opinion.
Thank you so much. You helped me a lot.
Yeah, of course, darling. With the challenging questions.
Always, right?
I know. One more. Give me another question. Come on, I'm on a roll. Come on, guys. You can do it. Ask me in Portuguese. I'll tell you in English. Come on. Tanali. Haha. I see a beautiful little face in my corner. Ask me a question, darling. Doesn't need to be like about the elections. It's okay. But anything. Ask me anything.
Asking about politics. What do you think about our government here in Brazil?
Okay, so the last time that I was, my first year in Brazil was during a presidential election, right? So I was there when Bolsonaro was elected. Personally, my perspective on governments that are not mine and countries that are not mine is to be humble, being humilde, because I don't have a direct perspective on your government, right? So I try to be humble about it because it's not my country, right? So I try not to tell you guys what to do so much. Although I feel like younger generations are more involved in Brazil.
Yeah.
So I'm a bit optimistic. Honestly, I have very little patience for governments that don't care about their people. That's just my general opinion. And I think, unfortunately, that applies to Brazil, right? And I think that education is essential, right? And a lot of Brazilians don't have access to education. I think that's a huge problem. I think that a lot of people don't have access to language learning, which puts them at great disadvantage, right? I think it's something like only 3% of Brazilians speak English. That's ridiculous, right? Everyone should have access to a quality education, and everyone should have access to other languages, because you are literally decreasing the amount of access that you have to information if you take away that language, right? And it's not just English, right? You need to know how to speak Portuguese, right? If you don't have proper training in your own language, how are you supposed to have access to jobs? How are you supposed to have access to higher education, right? How are you supposed to be able to go to college? And so I think that's it, you know? I think that the United States in particular cares more about its military than it does about education, for example. I think that is similar to Brazil. I'm not as educated on Brazil's military, but I think that we want to seem powerful in terms of our military and over our intelligence, if that makes sense. So we're like, okay, you know, the students can wait another year to go to school, but we need more military. Why? Who are you fighting now, right? So it's like, what's the point?
Yeah, I agree with you. Exactly what I think.
If you don't agree with me, that's okay.
No.
That's another cultural point that I should make, is that Americans from the North, us, are more comfortable with conflict than Brazilians in general. You can tell me you think I'm wrong. That's okay with me. But you have to tell me why. Right? You can't just be like, Barbara, you don't know what you're talking about. Okay, well then tell me. Tell me why. It is perfectly okay for you to think that I'm wrong and for you to think something else. Right? But you have to defend yourself. Virginia, I saw something. What were you thinking, girl? I saw something.
No, I think you are right.
Yes? Girl,
Yes.
It's okay. You can argue with me. I got the energy. Ask Samira. I will argue with you all day, girl.
Yeah, I noticed that those two girls, they have similar opinions perhaps you should exchange WhatsApp numbers and start talking a bit more.
Girl, yeah.
Yeah, because
No,
I know both of
on
them are my
WhatsApp.
students, and I know their opinions and the way they think, and they agree with you quite a lot. Yeah.
Yes,
But
include me into this group.
yes, girl. But seriously, like, you can disagree with someone. That's okay. It's just, like, I don't agree with my own family, but it's about being respectful and being able to have a discussion, right? Because just telling each other you're stupid doesn't help anybody, right? It's that dialogue that really creates change. And I think it's more problematic in terms of our government when they hide things, right? So the word here, and I believe it's the same in Portuguese, is transparency, all right? So if we had a more transparent government in Brazil and in the United States, we'd have a lot less problems. Sure, there's certain secrets that I can't know about, that's fine. But in terms of you hiding money, where is it going, right? I know for a fact it's not going to education, for example. So it's issues of transparency in my household, in my home, as well as in the government that I think is more problematic than having disagreeing opinions. All right, any final questions, comments, concerns?
As you said, different opinions. I think the key is knowledge. You can't be ignorant, you know, you have to know what you're talking about. If you don't know, it's okay. You can search about it. You can change your opinion. You can always improve yourself. Yes, self-education. Yes, that's the key.
Yeah,
To keep improving, keep opening your mind. That's the thing I really appreciate.
Yeah, no, I'm looking up, I wanted to send you guys, so especially during this time, self-education is extremely critical because, for example, Black people in this time are exhausted, right? It is an extremely difficult time for these communities. And so rather than asking them questions, it's extremely important for you to try to educate yourself first, right? It is not, for example, as women, how would we feel if a man was like, what is it like? Blah, 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 okay? Sometimes you don't want to talk to them about it, right? Sometimes you don't want to talk about it. Sometimes you just want to relax, right? And so it's important for them to also do their research. And so there is one, if you guys have Instagram, there's one resource that I wanted to show you guys. The handle is So You Want to Talk About. And I find this very helpful for me. And also I think it's good for, non-native English speakers because it has a lot of like visual aspects to it. A lot of like, just like, you know, infographics. So if you guys have Instagram, this is a great resource for different things going on in the world and in the United States, and it's all in English. And I don't think the vocabulary is extremely difficult, but it breaks down a lot of very complex topics. And so I use this to learn myself, because just because I'm a native English speaker doesn't mean this isn't complicated, right? And so things like racism, things like capitalism, things like domestic violence, right? Very difficult topics. Any of the educators on here, right? We're all learners, but we're also educators. So maybe you want to talk to someone about a very complicated topic. I think this would be an excellent resource. This is how social media has been greatly benefiting me, is that I get to learn using different pages that are posted, right? I challenge myself to read more instead of, you know, maybe series are great, but I think that reading is also very essential in terms of being able to gain a lot of complex information. So, and then also, in case you can't see it, this is me. So that's my Instagram. As long as it's okay with Samira, you know, she's the boss here. But like, you know, I would like to offer myself as a resource, right? Something that I would like to do during the pandemic is also remind you that, you know, there are people that care about you in the world and that Brazilians are very important, right? I think sometimes we think that just because I'm Brazilian, it means that my opinion doesn't matter because I'm not American. That's not true, okay? You all have a beautiful language and beautiful cultures in Brazil, and it's very much a privilege to be able to speak to you and to be able to get to know those cultures. And so if you would ever like to speak to a Brazilian loving American, okay, so disponível a vocês, okay, fica à vontade, you are welcome to speak to me. I will speak to Brazilians all day, ask my parents, because I'm always speaking in Portuguese around the house. But yeah, so self-education, my friends, you know, take a risk, ask questions.
Okay, that's really good. Really, really nice. People, there are 2 hours we are here. I feel very glad all of you follow up to now. I know that perhaps some of you would carry on a bit more, but I believe it's time to finish our meeting. I would like to thank you all, first of all, for being here with me, with Barbara, with all the teachers. I know that you can learn quite a lot, not only about your language, but mainly getting more confident about your own language, about the language you're learning. You see that it's not impossible to talk to a native speaker. We are able to talk. And some things I usually say to my students at Futura, mainly, that we should organize or we should get together and feel more like a community of speakers. Because as Barbara said, there is just a few people in Brazil who is able to speak in English. So these people are able to speak Portuguese, barely speaking sometimes. And then we are here, 20 something people, we were 25, 26 people, being able to understand English and to communicate in English. This is lovely, beautiful. Not because it is English, because this is an international language that we can fight, we can discuss, we can understand in this language and be part of the world. And this is the main reason. Not because I want to be an American. Sorry, Barbara. I don't want to be an American.
Okay.
It is just because of that, because we can get along, we can understand, we can discuss. This is the point, okay? Thank you so, so much, Barbara. You know how much I appreciate your opinions, your work, your attitude toward the world. And of course, if you don't mind, I think I'm gonna call you again and again, and then we can arrange other things and think about other things.
Yeah, no, you are always welcome. You know, like I said, my priority is to speak to Brazilians 99% of my time. So, fico à vontade. And then, like I said, if you guys ever want to message me, if you do have Instagram or I'm on Facebook, you know, that's perfectly fine with me. I post a lot of different things on my stories and on Instagram in English. And so, you know, reading.
Yeah, it's another source, native speakers, slangs and natural language. Okay, people, thanks a lot for being here all together. Thank you again, Barbara. Have a lovely week. Rest well and be safe, people. Thanks a lot for being here.
Take care.
Bye. See you around. I hope so one day. So dear. Thank you so much. It was very nice, very cool.
They are so sweet. I adored speaking with them.
Yes. Some of them, sometimes they feel uncomfortable. They don't feel, oh, I have nothing to say. I can't make a question. But it's just like the first moment.
Yeah, no, and I'm very excited to see, you know, I think a lot of people that normally wouldn't speak were able to offer some opinions today. So it's fantastic to work with them.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
I feel very glad of having this contact with you and being able to explore this bridge
and then
we
please let me
created.
know- Yeah, please let me know anything else you may need. I hope that this was successful for your students as well. But
I hope
yeah.
so too. I'll give
Anything
you
else?
feedback as soon as possible, then grabbing with them what they found about this meeting, and then I'll let you know. Okay?
Awesome. Thank you, love.
Nighty night. See you around, I hope. Oh, if you come to Brazil, please, if you come to the south, let me know, right?
It's seriously my goal. I want to get to know your city.
Oh, yes. I know that this is not the best moment, but maybe in the future, near future.
Absolutely.
Okay. So bye-bye. See you around.
Bye.